Hello and welcome to your weekly card pull. My name is Alexa. Today I'm doing a reading for the week of July 7th through July 13th of 2024. So the first two cards that I want to really dive into for you guys are Kyanite and Apache Tears. Now both of these were pulled in the reverse, meaning they appear upside down. Anytime cards are pulled in this way, it generally signifies that there's something that you may want to look at internally, something that may be very deep within yourself. Oftentimes in our lives, we are shown things externally, so we'll be put in situations or meet certain people, and of course there are differences between those, but ultimately a lot of what goes on around us is symbolic of or reflective of things that are going within us as well. So just something to keep in the back of your mind if there's a certain situation that's coming up for you and it is involving another person, which it's not unlikely that that is the case, but if that is happening, just be aware that anything that's coming up in that regard is also symbolic of something going on within you. So make sure that for any situation that might be coming up to your mind or comes up to your mind during this reading, that is not excluded to what's going on around you. So make sure that you are willing to look at your relationship to yourself and how these things might be mirroring or teaching you about things that are going on internally and within yourself. So with Kyanite in reverse, one thing that we can keep in mind, and that I actually really stuck out to me while reading through the book here, it says, although we can each have our own ways, which we do for the most part, although we each have our own ways, we can learn so much and gain tremendous support when we let go of our rigid my way or the highway attitude, recognizing that we are all imperfect. Looking for our commonalities can steady us when we're feeling a bit shaky. So again, this can definitely apply to situations with other people. Maybe there are situations in your work life or in your personal life, romantic relationships, familial relationships, something where there's some kind of like tension and maybe there's a little bit too much focus on how are we different and our differing views and what we don't have in common. And taking the time to step back and really appreciate the commonalities and things that you do have in common and the things that sort of bring you guys together might be a good place to start. It doesn't mean that of course, it doesn't mean that you have to lose yourself or your sense of individuality, but if you are looking to kind of restore a sense of harmony, a lot of that will come from being willing to see from the other person's perspective and also being willing to see from their perspective how are there things that actually do kind of align, and of course there are going to be areas where some of those don't, and that's okay. That's kind of just part of life. Something else to keep in mind with this particular reading, because I pulled Kyanite in reverse as well as the Apache Tears in reverse, both of these being in the reverse are asking you to look at how these more deeply represent things that might be going on internally. So if you can't think of an experience that's going on around you where you're like, I don't know what this is, maybe look at your relationship to yourself, or even if or though you can maybe see some areas in your life where there are tensions, disputes, etc. with the world around you, ask yourself how that's a reflection of something going on within you. It is not unlikely that there might be a situation that is coming up to show you maybe some like aspects of yourself or your life that are maybe a little bit more complex, and it's not like a simple this or that, and maybe you have a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and that causes some kind of internal tension. I've been experiencing this a lot within myself in the last year or so, really looking at the areas where there's this sensation of inner conflict because of two seemingly diametrically opposed aspects of myself, but ultimately at the end of the day, what do both of those pieces want? They want me to feel loved, supported, cared for, etc. And it's just that there are different aspects of you that may think, oh, there's a different way to go about creating that for myself. And so if that's the case, or if that resonates, I would just encourage you to be willing to acknowledge how these experiences that are going on around you, like that's not the end all be all. There's probably something deeper there, and that deeper thing is asking for you to really inspect your relationship to yourself. So please make sure that you are conscientious and aware of that. However, again, going back to the card of Kyanite, I feel like there's one other thing that wants to come up. That this is definitely more in regards to your relationships to the world around you. Again, this could be any kind of relationship, romantic, platonic, working, etc. So you may be right and have the best idea in the room, but Kyanite's spirit is telling you that in this moment, you are called to be the bigger person, the diplomat seeking to connect on a level of mutual understanding. There was a reason you wanted to connect with this person or these people, whoever this may be, and now you have the power to do so in a healthy way that honors you and them. They will learn from your modeling of diplomacy. You might be surprised by how much more readily your wisdom is heard when you reach out in love before trying to sway someone with logic. So definitely a call to pay attention to the emotional component of what's going on. Again, what are the commonalities? It is likely, especially if this is more of a personal relationship, but even if this is business, it is likely that there is some kind of common goal that you guys both have. And maybe you just both have a different way of going about that. Again, symbolic of the relationship you have to yourself. Common united goal, that's something that you want to pay attention to, that commonality, that piece that really brings things together. And then maybe there's just different ways of going about trying to get that. If you can establish very clearly like what the common goal is and come from that place rather than I'm right, you're wrong, so I'm going to tell you what's the right answer, that will open up a lot more doors for very honest communication and potentially like healthier levels of compromise. So just something to keep in mind. With this reading, again, I did also pull the Apache Tears in reverse, and this card has a lot to do with releasing and letting go of grief, especially, or heavy emotions that are kind of burdening you and bringing you down. So this may be relating to something a little bit more on the personal level. There could be multiple areas in your life where you're seeing these themes come up. This card is telling me, though, that there may be some aspect of yourself or of your life that either is bringing you or has brought you to a place of grief, for a lack of a better word. This card can come up as a reminder to us of the areas in our life where maybe we're holding on to pain, and the purpose of holding on to pain is not so that we continue to hurt ourselves. The purpose that we carry when we decide to hold on to pain, whatever that may look like, whether that's not forgiving someone, not forgiving ourselves, etc. The deeper, in my opinion at least, the deeper purpose of this experience is so that we're basically trying to find a way so that we don't have to experience that same pain again. And so when holding on to it, we remember, okay, well, this was attached to this, which created this feeling or it elicited this response. And so sometimes we can wire our brains, especially if we've been through a lot of pain or a significant amount of pain in a short amount of time. We can wire ourselves to hold on to that and remember the experiences specifically so that we can see the red flags, quote unquote, coming up in the future so we don't have to ever experience that pain again. Now, the unfortunate thing about this is that ends up creating a cycle where you're coming from a place of expecting that to happen. So you can almost like continually create this cycle of pain, even if it's not something that's happening to you from the outside world. Like let's say you were in a relationship that was abusive. And so you internalize that abuse and you say, okay, well, I never want to experience that. So instead of someone else hurting me, I'm going to start saying, all these mean things to myself so that I can fix myself so that no one else will call me those things again. And what happens is we can sometimes take that cycle of pain and continue to put it on ourselves and continue to re-experience it over and over and over again with the attempt to we're trying to not feel it again. But then in the process of doing that, and instead of like releasing the pain and letting it go, it can create the same effect, even though it then becomes a very internal process. For some of you, because this is reversed, I feel like this may resonate pretty heavily. And for some of you, that may be like, nah, it's really not that heavy, not something I'm experiencing currently. This can be any range of things. It doesn't have to be something super deep and meaningful, although I do feel like for some of you, not all of you, but for some of you it is. Also something to note, at this time, we are in Cancer season. So some of the emotions may be a little bit on the deeper side and a little bit on the bigger side. And if that's the case, it's completely okay. These emotions are here for a reason. And so I feel like there's a lot that's coming up to teach you something. And finally, a little word of encouragement with the Apache Tears. If you are in a situation or an experience where you feel a little bit discouraged or a little bit bogged down, or you feel like you have been that way, just keep in mind that all pain also does come with gifts. It may take a while to see those, but you will see everything through a different set of eyes one day, provided that you are willing to allow that evolution to happen and allow those shifts to happen. So my advice for you, my dears, for this week would be to allow that process of letting go to begin or to unfold or to happen or to complete itself, depending on where you are in that cycle. Because in doing that and allowing yourself to release that pain, it opens you up to actually heal from it, as opposed to like continually re-experiencing that pain. And this may be something that benefits your other relationships. This may be something that also benefits if you have those experiences either within yourself where there's tension or with others where there's tension. Maybe there's like an aspect of yourself that you need to forgive yourself for, and because you haven't, that's being projected on other people, so it's affecting your relationships with them. Maybe it's vice versa. There could be a number of ways, but I do feel like these two kind of go hand in hand, and there is, for a lot of you, likely going to be some kind of almost like symbiotic effect of paying attention to these themes and giving some time and some love and care to them. I feel like time, love, and care are going to be really, really important themes. The astrology right now and what's going on, I'm not going to get super into that, but we are, as noted, in Cancer season right now, and this is a really good time to kind of slow down and focus on play, focus on your emotions, and focus on really feeling things before you, like really feeling into things before you move forward. I don't know how else to say that. So allow yourself to feel your feelings. I think that's why I wanted to go on these cards first, because my next two cards actually have a lot to do with action and a lot to do with taking next steps. So the other two cards that I pulled for you, my dears, the first one is Demorturite, and then the other one is Big Spite. These cards are both kind of pretty action-oriented cards. I feel like for some of you, getting organized, honestly, is going to be really helpful. This could be some, I would say spring cleaning, but let's be honest, it's summer, so maybe some summer cleaning if you haven't done that or you didn't do your spring cleaning. Especially if you're feeling kind of like disorganized or disarray, this may be a very helpful tool for you in this upcoming week. Taking the time to also write out lists. I know that in my own experience, sometimes I avoid the steps of like planning and prep work, and you know, sometimes it can be easier to just like start bulleting into the actual work that you have to do, but in doing that you miss key steps, or maybe you're not going to be as efficient, or you're not going to be as organized. And the encouragement for you guys is to take time to get organized and to realize that there's value in doing that. And especially right now in the middle of Cancer season, where there's a lot of emotions flying, and then with the other two cards that I pulled, if you're feeling a little bit ungrounded, coming back to some kind of like clearing out clutter and just stripping down to the basics, honestly, stripping down to the bare bones. Even with Kyanite, which was totally different theme, it still comes down to stripping down to the bare bones of like, what do we have in common? What is meaningful to both of us? What is like what's the deeper underlying theme? So there is a level of that will be valuable. Finally, another theme to keep in mind, and I'll close out this card with saying this: not all plans will come to fruition, but in the planning we learn so much. For some of you, part of this process, I feel like this grieving process, may be something that you took a lot of time, put a lot of time into and made plans for, and you put a lot of energy into. And so part of the grieving process is also going to be accepting that just because the plans didn't go according to the way that you thought they would, or the way that you wanted them to, doesn't mean that they didn't work. It doesn't mean that they didn't have value. It doesn't mean that they weren't useful just because it didn't go the way that you thought it might. This card is a reminder of that. This card is a reminder that sometimes that planning process teaches us a lot, even if it doesn't all go according to plan. Sometimes I am very honestly like avoidant to planning, because I know that in some areas of my life, things are very unpredictable. So I'm like, why would I plan? Because that's just going to go to shit anyways. But then, you know, like you lose out on the lessons that planning has to teach you. So just a friendly reminder to be willing to do that. And finally, the card of Big Spite. This card is the full steam ahead action card. I feel like these have to come first a little bit. I feel like this is the kind of like end all result card. I don't, that was a really non-eloquent way to say that, but with Big Spite, there is an encouragement to move forward. There is an encouragement to move forward on the things that especially you feel called to, or your intuition feels called to. This is not really a time to like sit back and be passive. I'm just getting some kind of spirited action. At the end of the day, this is all propelling you into something. You're being propelled into the next chapter, as is always the case in life and never not the case. With this Big Spite, finally, last thing, I'm feeling called to open up the book to see if there's anything else that's sticking out. Take a deep breath and we'll move full speed ahead with forceful action on behalf of your own healing. This theme of healing seems really important. I feel like for some of you, maybe you're avoiding the healing. I don't know. If you are, I feel like you'll know. And let go of anything that might impede you as you act on the inner conviction to bring love into your life by nourishing your relationships. This is interesting. Okay, this is going to be interesting. We're going to see the theme. The themes of the first two cards are going to come up right here, right now. Because with this card, what it's saying is, there is time enough for to-do lists. Today is a day for connecting and reconnecting with those that you care about and reaching out to those you have said you want to get to know better. So, kind of interestingly enough, we have two cards, one being about to-do lists and one that is encouraging you to take action, especially when it comes to relationships, and saying like to-do lists don't always have to be done. So what am I saying here? Balance and diplomacy, finding the middle ground between these. There cannot be balance without the presence of imbalance. It doesn't make sense. It's not possible. So I do feel like for some of you, honestly, this may feel like a very chaotic message, but I feel like it's going to sink in at the end of the day that like ultimately this Kyanite card, I feel like this one's really kind of the main theme of the main message of finding the commonalities between all of these. Finding the commonality, like what is the commonality between having to-do lists and also not being so reliant on them, and being willing to find the space between obsessively checking things off the box and getting things done and relaxing and taking time off for yourself. Like where's that middle ground? And I feel like you're being encouraged to find the middle ground. That's really what this comes down to, is find the middle ground. Okay, I felt close on that. I feel like that was a little bit chaotic. It's fine, shit happens. I guess the reading just wanted to be that way. But I'm gonna move into tarot because I feel like it's gonna provide a little bit more clarity and consolidation and pull some things together for us. Okay guys, so for my tarot pull for you guys, I pulled 3 cards that have to do with swords. I pulled the Knight of Swords, I pulled the Knave of Swords in reverse, I pulled the Seven of Swords in reverse, and then I pulled 5 of Coins in reverse for you guys. So I'm gonna talk about the swords cards first, explain those a little bit, especially for those of you who are not super inclined to tarot, and then I'm gonna move into the coins card. So swords is represented by air signs, or the element of air. This has a lot to do with our thoughts, our communication, the way that we think, and the way that we speak to other people. Also the way that we internalize things to some degree. This can be representative in some way of our health, but specifically when it comes to illness, especially the swords cards have a lot to do with like worry, anxiety, because a lot of those, not that, like, of course there are biological things and whatnot that affect those, but there are also elements of that have a lot to do with our narratives and the way that we're talking to ourselves and the way that we're thinking to ourselves and the way that we're internalizing the world around us. And that has a lot to do, again, with the lens through which we're perceiving things. So communication is a really, really big theme with these, with this, I don't know, house? Suit. That's what I was looking for. Jesus Christ. Okay. So, my dears, because I pulled the Seven of Swords in reverse and I pulled the Knave of Swords in reverse, both of these cards have some themes that have to do with being a little bit outspoken or not very conscientious of your words, maybe not conscientious of the way that your words affect people or the way that words hurt people. This could be either something that you experienced where you maybe said some things kind of carelessly and you hurt someone else, or vice versa. And so going back to the cards that I pulled from the Oracle deck, especially with Kyanite and Apache Tears, I feel like some of you, this may be pertaining to that theme of what has gone on around you or what you may have been experiencing in those situations. So I don't know. I think the first thing to pay attention to is the way, like the power of words and the power that those have and the power of communication. This is, again, also, because these are both in reverse, prevalent to your words to yourself, the way that you're talking to yourself. Are you being kind to yourself or are you being mean to yourself? If the way that you're talking to yourself is like deplorable compared to the way that you'd speak to other people, that is something that I would encourage you to look at honestly and pay attention to. Because if you're being mean to yourself, you're not that you're inviting the world around you to do it, but there's almost like a permission slip you give to everyone else if that's the case. So I would just say be mindful of the way that you're communicating to others and communicating to yourself. With the Knight of Swords, something to keep in mind with this card as well. This card speaks a little bit about like recklessness and impulsivity, especially impulsiveness errors. So when it comes to your decisions, again, with especially like Dumortierite and the Big Spite, these having to do with kind of like really thinking about things and thinking about things honestly, planning ahead. Just don't be too impulsive. Like, yes, we got the full spirited, courageous action, move ahead card, but this card comes also with the caution of being obtuse and unaware of the effects of those actions, and especially if those actions involve words or speaking to others. So just a kind encouragement to be conscientious of that. And then finally, I did pull the Five of Coins. This card can be a little bit challenging to look at sometimes because it does speak to the themes of fives are generally about like upheavals and big change, and coins are about material wealth or sense of like security, especially physical security. So some of you, and this is not an omen, by the way, so some of you may have been experiencing a little bit of disarray in this arena, or a sensation of disarray in this arena. Some of you may have experience some material struggle or some financial struggle. This could be related to your work, to your health, overspending. And sometimes, not all the time, sometimes when this card comes up, it speaks of areas where we may be experiencing some kind of loss or have experienced loss. Again, with the Apache tears, I feel like a lot of you already went through this and already went through this process. Maybe you had like a huge experience with like a loss of money at the beginning of the year, and you're still processing that and feeling down on yourself because of your choices or the choices that you made that led up to that, or a relationship, or whatever it is. So if that is the case, the encouragement that comes with this card, because it's not all bad, the encouragement that comes with this card is that, like any loss or any pain, also comes with the invitation to heal and the invitation to recover. So this card is actually symbolic of the recovery from ruin, or the recovery from those kinds of experiences, and also the potential to reverse a bad trend. So if you've noticed your actions, especially like self-sabotaging types of behaviors, you are being shown the areas where you can shift that. Because this was in reverse, maybe those have a little bit more to do with your relationship with yourself. Again, going back to what does your relationship to yourself look like, and how is that being reflected in the world around you? I would say that definitely is a really good place to start and to focus your energy in this upcoming week, because in doing that, you're opening yourself up to the ability to release old pain, to release old struggles, to release old habits and patterns, so that you can start moving into things and planning for things that are a little bit more aligned with you, and a little bit more aligned with the place that you want to be going. And that, my dears, is the thing that I would say you should have full action, full spirit ahead on, which is that process of healing and recovering, which you are being called and invited to step into if you haven't already. And if you're already in it, keep going, sweetie. You're doing great. You're doing just fine. All right. I'm feeling called to close out. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. If you have questions, comments, or anything of the sort, please feel free to reach out and shoot me a message. You can find me here, Instagram, TikTok, everywhere at alexab.alchemy. I did take a little break from TikTok. I took a break from Instagram as well, but I'm a little more active on there now. So if you don't hear back from me from a few days, just be patient. Keep harassing me. Keep sending me messages, and I'll get back to you. All right. I love you guys so much. Thank you for tuning in. I am going to try to post one for the entire month of July as well. So if you want a little bit more guidance to stretch you for the whole month, please make sure that you check that out. All right. You guys have a fantastic rest of your week, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.